Stencil TV, and we're talking about ransomware attacks. I'm here with Orone Motoagai, the CEO of Stencil Technologies. People are wondering, what is a ransomware attack and why do they care? You know, the first one that pops into my mind is that one in Ireland. What happened there?
The National Health Services.
The National Health Services in
So
Ireland.
they get hacked into. So the whole idea of ransomware is that it's, like the word suggests, ransom. So cybersecurity bandits or hackers or whatever you want to call them, they break into your system and get a hold of your sensitive data, right? And once they get a hold of your sensitive data, they quote unquote lock it. So when they lock it, they then say to you, we need you to give us X amount of dollars, typically in cryptocurrency, typically in Bitcoin, which is hard to trace. You can't trace it, but it's really hard to trace. And that's really the kind of modus operandi that they take. And a lot of organizations find themselves having to actually pay.
So,
because what are you going to do?
The other example, there was a pipeline in the US that got held to ransom, and they paid $4 million for that data to be unlocked,
released, yeah.
To be released.
Yeah.
And that's basically what they do. So they come in and they take over, for you at home, they would take over your desktop and they would say, in order for us to unlock your desktop, pay us so much money. Now imagine that at a massive national scale.
A lot of organizations have actually been attacked, whether they tell us or they don't. In fact, part of the reason organizations don't tell is because they don't want to be seen to be vulnerable by their consumers.
Yeah.
Because what happens if your insurance company has been hacked and they've had to pay somebody?
Or your bank.
Now you think, can I trust these guys?
Yeah.
So they can't do that. So they just go ahead and pay the ransomware bandits, and case closed.
But are we seeing a lot of people taking proactive measures against ransomware attacks?
I think there's a lot of talk about it. I think there's a lot of concern with a lot of corporates. Whether or not they're partnering with the right partners to get it done is another story. But it's important that organizations actually get into partnership. Technology providers that can provide not only antiviruses and anti-ransomware, but organizations need to be looking at this field of data loss prevention. So data loss prevention speaks to protecting the sensitive data that you have within the organization. Firstly, identifying it and taking an inventory of all sensitive data within the organization.
Mission critical stuff, right?
Absolutely. Who should have access to it? At what level? Who can transmit this data? And then encrypting the endpoint devices. So when I say endpoint devices, I'm talking about every single device that connects into your enterprise network. Unfortunately, because while the COVID-19 migrate to the home movement has been great for output because we can squeeze the most out of our employees, right? Just and slave drive them to work until 9 p.m. while they're changing nappies.
Yeah.
It has also presented another challenge, which is that I'm connecting with my laptop into my enterprise network. Great, through the VPN, good for you.
Yeah.
But the device that I'm connecting through is actually not encrypted and protected.
Yeah.
So endpoint protections it aims to actually protect that device itself. In a network, my network at home is not fully encrypted like the network at the office. So that's literally where the vulnerabilities to the organizations will come out of. Because if I come through that unencrypted and unprotected laptop or device at your home, then I actually literally then just ride on, the encrypted VPN connection into the enterprise network.
And then I do what I want.
And then I do what I want.
The one that scared me the most was the idea that I have a device at home and I have a home printer. So yes, now I've got an endpoint protection system for my laptop, right? But I send a print job, which is on my Wi-Fi, to my printer, and my printer has actually been compromised. And when it comes back to say print job done, bang, there's a packet, and that packet goes into the system. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of these ransomware attacks can be resolved by, all these different structures in place. Find a way that you can respond and react quickly to deal with the problems at hand. And most of the organizations that are here and the rest of the continent, to be honest, they're not big enough to have these massive backup storage systems, in different places. You can set it up so that you're agile and you're able to respond quickly to these ransomware attacks, and you can actually have very little downtime in terms of your business.
Absolutely. Look, except to say that I think look for a data loss prevention partner that can actually give you a lot of other ancillary services around just data loss prevention and endpoint protection. So the typical, if you ask any organization, they will tell you, oh, we have a mirror image of our organization at some place or the other. But what they don't have is a mirror image of every single device within that organization at device level. So my laptop gets compromised and somebody locks the data in there. I don't have that data from the meeting earlier today anywhere else.
And imagine you're working on a
Until
multi-million-dollar deal.
absolutely, and until a point where I've actually saved it onto the company server, which then replicates to the mirror image of the mirror server that keeps our backup. I don't have another image of that information.
And what's scary about that is, yes, we've talked about networks and endpoints, but the biggest weakness is people.
Absolutely.
Right? The social engineering in order to gain access to phishing or anything like that.
Yeah.
And the second part is you have to follow the policy to back that information up.
Yeah.
So how do we resolve that, the policy issue?
So you have to, unfortunately, with the people issues, you kind of have to do a lot of change management, and you have to do quite a bit of policing. A couple of years ago, a young man broke into the NASA servers and created himself as an astronaut salary. When they traced it back, then they realized that the head of NASA himself, his password was password 123.
Oh my word.
So it really narrows down to the human element almost 90% of the time. But, the other 10% can be quite detrimental as well. But, the people issue has to really be handled within every organization.
But I feel like we can mitigate the people issues as well by putting something in place. So like making it so that password 123 is not an acceptable password.
Yeah.
By automatically backing things up. By, you can find solutions that minimize your risk to people failure, to human error, which is something that will always happen.
So when it comes to cyber protection and cyber security, because we work with people, as long as you have people in the system, there will always be a component of it. To your point, we can minimize it to a certain extent. We can do training, we can do refresher training, we can ensure that we police as much as we can, but there'll always be that small human factor that comes into play, right? But through cyber monitoring, we can actually at least be able to pick up any cues of anomaly that come through the networks and whatnot, so that we actually know when somebody is about to be compromised or when they have been compromised already.
And this brings us to the Security Operations Center, which is more or less just monitoring traffic and activity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on Christmas morning.
Of course.
Because I believe there's like a golden window when people tend to do these type of attacks. It's like on holidays in the middle of the night.
Of course.
When people aren't watching the traffic.
Yeah.
And then they can just slam a brute force attack and hopefully get
Absolutely.
into the system.
Absolutely. I mean, between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m., if I send 1 million brute force instructions to your server per minute, I mean, by 4 a.m., I should have done something that has let me do something.
Yeah.
But if somebody's watching that, then they react to it almost immediately. This is exactly what our Security Operations Center will aim to do. Yeah. And I think we'll have one of these sessions where we'll talk about the Security Operations Center and exactly just unpack what it's going to be doing and the benefits to the consumers that this SOC, which will come as a service, will do for our consumers.
Perfect. Great. Ransomware attacks are real. They're here. They're happening, in an organization near you. Make sure that your data is safe. Make sure your organization's data is safe. Make sure that you have a strategy. Think about it. Talk about it. Don't think about it as something that happens overseas. But if you have questions, a lot of the stuff that we do, if we can't do it, we'll find someone that can. So that's Ransomware on Stencil TV.